I'm very disappointed that an inclusive agreement couldn't be reached so that this historic moment meant something to all 60 Scoop survivors.
Tonight, what could the new year hold for 60 Scoop survivors?
The annex there is trying to obliterate any kind of rights that we have.
The first woman to challenge gender discrimination in the Indian Act joins the Order of Canada.
I've been clean and sober for about 17 years now. And, I enjoy going to communities and sharing my story of inspiration about why I don't drink or use drugs.
And a young Cree actor brings hope home. Good evening, I'm Rick Harp. We begin tonight with our continuing look back on some of the bigger stories of 2017. Last October, the federal government took a significant step in resolving a long-standing legal battle for 60 Scoop survivors. But critics say the package excluded Métis adoptees, opened the door for additional lawsuits, and left many upset with the money lawyers walked away with. With more, here's Dennis Ward.
Some of those who fought.
An emotional Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations took to the podium with a number of 60 Scoop survivors by her side. Carolyn Bennett announced an agreement in principle with survivors who were ripped from their homes and adopted out to non-Indigenous families. Chief Marcia Brown Martel, a claimant in the class action, called it a significant day for survivors and Indigenous children.
That their culture, they will not be taken from it. That this time is closing. It is coming to an end. This stealing of children and placing them into something that is not of them, their lifestyle, their ways, their culture is gone from them, language is gone from them, that these days are coming to a close.
The compensation package announced would see adoptees receive up to $50,000.
At the moment, there is from up to $750 million in direct compensation to the survivors, and $50 million into the foundation, and then separate from that is $75 million in terms of legal fees.
The amount lawyers would take home didn't sit well with some survivors. Those frustrations played out on an episode of In Focus shortly after the settlement.
So the lawyers are going to get millions, and someone like Marlene and myself will get $25,000. Like, there seems to be a huge imbalance there.
How many law firms were involved in this settlement? Like, how many
question.
took part?
There are 2 law firms in Ontario. There are, I think, another 3 or 4 or 6 or 8, honestly. The number escapes me right now, but if I were to guess, it's around 10 law firms.
So 10 law firms are going to split $75 million, while the rest of us take peanuts.
The settlement is also being criticized for excluding Métis and non-status Indigenous people.
I'm very disappointed that an inclusive agreement couldn't be reached so that this historic moment meant something to all 60 Scoop survivors.
Weeks after the settlement was announced at a rally for 60 Scoop survivors in Winnipeg, some survivors said they were taking legal action to overturn the agreement.
We had no say in this whatsoever. We are looking for a lawyer, and we are going to put a stop to this and go at it again, keep fighting.
In the months following the announced settlement, other law firms have popped up, also looking to find 60 Scoop survivors for potential action against provinces and child welfare organizations.
And APTN National News will continue to follow the latest developments in this proposed settlement. In fact, the package will be the subject of an upcoming edition of APTN Investigates. APTN's John Murray has been looking into the offer, and he's here in studio. All right, thanks for joining me, John.
Absolutely, thanks for having me, Rick.
Now, you've been looking at this case extensively. There have been some developments for Scoop survivors over the past year. What can you tell us?
Well, essentially, back in February of 2017, the Ontario Superior Court ruled that Canada owed a duty of care to Indigenous children to not lose their Indigenous identity. Justice Baloba, he called this a common law duty of care to make sure kids retain their identity. And essentially, Canada breached that duty of care when they entered into a 1965 agreement with Ontario. And that agreement transferred the authority of the child welfare over to the provinces. And it was a class action suit that represented about 20,000 survivors in Ontario. And many people expected that the Government of Canada would appeal that decision, but in fact, they didn't. They started a negotiation for a final settlement that was expanded to include the whole nation.
Okay, so on the surface, settlement sounds like good news. I'm wondering what survivors could potentially expect from it.
Well, right now it's only an agreement in principle. They're aiming for a final agreement. It's coming any time, and then that's got to go through a court approval. But the money that's being given out wasn't agreeable to everyone, okay. Either because they weren't involved in the decision or they were excluded. And this hasn't gone well with many survivors.
Okay. So, you know, we're in the new year. What can we look forward to in terms of where this story will go?
Well, many of these survivors feel like they should be involved. So, although they say there may be a final agreement in the spring, many people were left out. So there's a lot of miscommunication, misunderstanding. Colleen Cardinal of the National Indigenous Survivors of Child Welfare Network in Ontario, it's a national organization, they've set up a phone line, and she's been fielding phone calls from people, and they don't know what's going on. And in fact, some people were even expecting checks by Christmas. So there's a lot of work to do to just inform people. But in addition to that, there were people left out of this settlement. The Métis and the non-status were also completely excluded. So there's a very good chance that we could see more lawsuits happening as well.
Okay.
And in addition to that, there may be, well, just people having to deal with this trauma and opening up old wounds.
Sure. So, of course, I mean, this is all going to be woven together in your upcoming episode of APTN Investigates. What's it called, and when can we expect to see it?
It's going to be airing January 26th, and it's called The Children Taken Away.
All right. John Murray, thank you for coming in.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Child welfare. It can be a difficult subject, both for those directly involved and for the reporters trying to share their stories. And next month, we'll address those challenges in a week-long series. Here to walk through some of those challenges are reporters Kenneth Jackson in Ottawa and Kathleen Martins here in studio. So, Kenneth, we'll start with you. We're talking today about restrictions on storytelling about children in care. You didn't necessarily face many of those in the case of Amy Owen. Why not?
I didn't just recently, but at the very beginning I did. The reason why I didn't recently is because, you know, she passed. She died by suicide in a group home. And her father gave me her autopsy report. And the autopsy report listed how she went to the hospital multiple times before she died. But, you know, I get a lot of calls for people or emails saying, can I do their story? But I can't show people the color of their eyes. I can't show them their hair color. I can't show them pictures when they're happy or when they're sad. I can't make them care. I can only make them care when they're dead. And that's the issue that I find a lot, is that I want to make change, or I want people to see what's going on with the system, but I can't do that because I'm not allowed to show you what they look like. I can't show you anything about them unless they have already died.
And so these are restrictions put in place by the jurisdictions in question.
Yeah, exactly, right? And the argument for that is privacy. Well, I don't buy that. I don't buy privacy at all. I think of parents, maybe in some cases there are certain situations where there needs to be protection, but I think in some other times there has to be a situation where people can come forward and I can show you that this person's in trouble because, you know, and make you care like you would care about a dog, you know, stuck on the freeway. You know what I mean? I can show you a picture of that dog on the freeway. I can't show you a picture of the kid escaping her group home over and over and over again and ending up at the Dorito Center, because if I do, I'm going to get charged, and so is APTN.
All right, Kathleen, you're facing a similar dilemma. Somebody we can't name, somewhere in the country, having an experience they're not happy about with the child welfare system where they live. What can you tell us about that?
Well, not very much. APTN is very restricted, as any media outlet is, reporting on these kinds of cases. Can tell you it's a person X. You know, can't say mom, dad, caregiver, grandparent, can't give you their name, can't tell you their community, can't even tell you their agency, how many kids they have in care, why the kids are in care. All of that is private. That's under, in Manitoba, for example, that's under the Child and Family Services Act. There is a fine of $5,000 and potential jail term of 2 years or both.
Against whom? You as a journalist?
Correct. For breaking that law and or the parent or caregiver. So the case that we'd love to tell you about is somebody who's using a social media platform to talk about their situation and their children's situation. And they have been threatened with the fine, with the jail term, if they don't shut down their account. So far, they haven't done that.
So are media, including APTN, trying to do something about this?
Some media outlets have reported it. We are working on a series that's going to come out next month to try to explain why people don't see more stories like Kenneth has reported on. It's very tough unless a child dies, unless somebody ages out of care, unless a parent can and then gives permission. We can't report on it. And as Kenneth said, is the privacy there to protect the children, or is it to help cover up mistakes and, you know, you can't get accountability? That's why whenever there's an inquest, media usually goes crazy and covers it like mad, because it's at least a way to peek into the system and see what's going on.
Now, Kenneth, we're in Winnipeg here. I'm very familiar with the situation in Manitoba. 10,000 Indigenous children in care. That tells me there must be lots of stories that you there in Ontario potentially could tell as well, where I also know a lot of Indigenous kids are in care.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Ontario just started tracking Indigenous kids in Ontario that are in care outside of the Indigenous welfare company agency. So, like in Ottawa, excuse me, my earpiece is falling out. In Ottawa, they just started tracking whether or not a First Nations kid is even in care. Like, they had no idea. Those numbers for the last 40 years, even last year, they have no idea how many Indigenous kids in Ottawa were in care. Unless, because they didn't track those things. They had, and I wrote about that earlier this year.
But that said, do you get a number of people coming forward saying, please tell the story of my experience with the system?
Yeah, you get those things, and you know it's difficult and it's frustrating because as a reporter, if you believe in the true sense of reporting, you want to make change, you want to help people, you want to be a mirror to a problem. Well, I can't put a mirror up to their face because I can't show their face. And you need to see them. You need to see the people. You need to see the pain. You need to see the struggle to understand it and to care. And it's hiding in a cloud of secrecy. And I don't know if that's to protect the child so much as it is to protect the province. Okay. I really believe. I think that's just fair comment.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Kenneth and Kathleen, for coming on and sharing your experiences and, I would suggest, frustrations.
Thank you.
And we would welcome your thoughts on this or any other story you see on the broadcast. Here's how to get in touch. You can email us via news@aptn.ca. You can like us on Facebook at APTN National News, or follow us on Twitter at APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. Some new honors have been bestowed by Canada's Governor General, who's just announced the latest appointments to the Order of Canada. And newly joining the Order are 125 men and women recognized for their contributions to Canadian society. Among them, Indigenous women's advocate Jeanette Corbière-Lavelle. APTN's Brittany Hobson brings us this report.
Jeanette Corbière-Lavalle's decades-long career has taken her all across Canada and even internationally. The women's advocate is most well known for challenging the Indian Act after she married a non-Indigenous man. She's now being honored for her work as one of the latest recipients of the Order of Canada.
I received a call just out of the blue from the Governor General's office. No prior warning, no little rumors or anything. I had no idea that this was coming.
She joins a long list of 125 new appointees, which was announced in December. She says the latest recognition is a reflection of the ongoing role Indigenous women play when it comes to advancing Indigenous rights.
We have many women, you know, young and older, who are doing amazing amounts of work at the community level, either in health, education, or just looking at our rights within the Indian Act and human rights.
The Governor General's office says Courbier-Laval is being recognized for advocating for Indigenous women's rights throughout Canada. In 1971, she lost her Indian status because she married David Laval, a non-Indigenous man. Deeming the Indian Act discriminatory against women, she decided to challenge the rule. In 1973, the challenge went to the Supreme Court, where she lost.
Technically, we didn't win in 1973 at the Supreme Court, but nonetheless, it opened up all this big discussion and the controversy, good and bad controversy.
An exhibit outlining Courbier-Laval's fight is on display at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. In November, she visited it for the first time and reflected on the ongoing issues with the Indian Act, including Bill C-31.
The Indian Act's there just trying to obliterate any kind of rights that we have, and it's still ongoing in terms of our land and other aspects of our life.
More than a dozen Indigenous people were appointed to the Order of Canada, including Fred Saskamoose, who was the first Indigenous player in the NHL, and Fisher River Cree Nation Chief David Crate for improving access to technology in Manitoba First Nations. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
When we return, we'll tag along with the man behind the character known as Crazy Dog. Stay tuned for more with actor Justin Rain. But first, your first weather outlook. Snow in Charlottetown +2, snow in St. John's -2. La Grande, cloudy -25, Nain, sunny -13. Saint-Jovite -9, cloudy, Quebec City -8 and snow. Toronto, cloudy -9, North Bay -20 and sunny. Big Trout Lake, cloudy -27, Thunder Bay -20 and sunny. Churchill -26 and sunny. Brandon, cloudy -20, Barons River, a sunny -22. Swift Current -4 and cloudy, also. Stony Rapids, cloudy and -23. Uranium City, -17, also cloudy. And welcome back. Fans of the popular AMC series Fear the Walking Dead know him as Crazy Dog. And for Cree actor Justin Rain, the recent holidays not only gave him a welcome break from a busy shooting schedule, they also gave him a chance to head home. APTN's Larissa Burnoff has more.
I'll keep the peace. Not at all costs.
He's recognizable on many popular television shows and even on the big screen. And like many of us, actor Justin Rain returns home for the holidays, but not only to visit family and friends. This holiday season, he spent several days visiting a handful of remote First Nations communities in his home province of Saskatchewan. This trip is not a new one for Rain. He makes it a point to return to northern Saskatchewan annually. He speaks openly to First Nations youth about the darker times in his life, nearly dying from drugs and alcohol at a young age.
That escalated to the point where I overdosed in my senior year of high school 3 times. Since then, I've been clean and sober. I've been clean and sober for about 17 years now. And, you know, I enjoy going to communities and sharing my story of inspiration about why I don't drink or use drugs. And
Rain says he believes talking openly about his journey can be used to help others.
You know, I've lost friends to suicide. On a few occasions, I seriously considered taking my own life. And I think it's important for us, you know, people in my position to visit and share our own personal insights and what we've discovered along the way, you know, to make it through.
Rain says the only way to move throughout life on a positive path is through creative expression.
I truly believe that every single one of us is an artist in some way, shape, or form. And if we stop creating, we will inevitably start destroying in other ways. A handful of various addictions and abuses.
Rain says when people abuse substances, they suppress who they are and where they come from, and it's a vicious cycle that nearly killed him. He says being creative and artistic in many ways has continued to lead him down a good path in life and has taken his career to new heights. Larissa Burnoff, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Thank you very much.
Time for a break. When APTN National News returns, some images of that recent ice quake in Alberta. Taking us there, the rest of tomorrow's weather picture.
Cloudy and -15 in High Level, cloudy and -7 in Fort McMurray. Lethbridge, a sunny -1, Edmonton, cloudy and 0. Campbell River, cloudy 5, Kamloops, -4, mostly cloudy. Dease Lake, -9 and cloudy. Prince George, roughly the same. Watson Lake, -15 and clouds. Same in Dawson City. Wrigley, -21 and clouds. Yellowknife, -16, mostly cloudy. Colville Lake, -15, clouds. Sax Harbor, -13, cloudy. Repulse Bay, a sunny -29, just like Baker Lake. Resolute, -29 and sunny. Iqaluit, -29, but mostly cloudy.
And welcome back to the newscast, where we're happy to share today's photo of the day. Stargazing with a furry friend in Big Stone Lake, Saskatchewan. A beautiful shot shared by Ragnar Robinson. You can share your photos with us by emailing them to share@aptn.ca, or you can tag APTN News for a chance to be featured on the program. Now, of course, you can also follow APTN News on Instagram to see all of our previous photos of the day, as well as shots from reporters taken around the country. Well, it's still the talk of the town in Alberta Beach, just west of Edmonton, where folks got jolted out of bed early Tuesday morning by a loud bang.
They cracked the rocks open even, whatever happened, and then moved all this dirt. Over on this side, you can see it's heaved the land right open.
Oh, look at that, eh? While the crowd was ripped apart and ice split outside, some had their walls cracked in their homes. The Alberta Geological Survey confirms there were 2 seismic magnitude 2 events late Monday night. It's believed the events were what are known as ice quakes, which is what happens when cold temperatures cause groundwater to freeze quickly and then pop, causing the ground to crack. Well, that's all we have time for tonight on our broadcast. Remember, you can see all our stories from tonight's show and previous stories all together on our website at aptnnews.ca. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.